I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches Livestream number 39. We're going to be looking at the concepts for the Vathut art challenge, which is a creature illustration that we set for you guys last week. Now, I did have to update my OS, and it reset some of my settings with my audio and video. So, any of you guys joining live, please let me know if anything seems out of sorts, and we'll try to get that situated. If you're new to the channel or new to the art challenges, then I am Clint Cearley. I'm an illustrator, best known for my work with Magic the Gathering, as well as just the overall Swatches community. And if you want to get involved with the art challenges, you can feel free to join in out on the Facebook group, swatches.group. Link is in the description. Or if you want your stuff reviewed during the stream, like I'll be doing now, then you need to become a patron over at patreon.com/swatches. Okay, otherwise, we are going to be going over these images today. We have 16 submitted by our patrons, and we're going to be reviewing them. Now, they have another week to work on these before the final. But we want to do a checkup, kind of see what's working, what's not working. Can we direct the image in a better direction before they start putting in a lot of time into the details? We'll also just be leaving a couple of minutes here just for people to join into the chat and be able to make sure they catch the views before they get started. All of this, of course, will be recorded and put into the library of the videos. I need to adjust something here. I'm going to switch over to the... There we go. Kina, hey, how's it going? Thanks for joining over on Patreon. Didn't expect this for another hour. I know that the time change gets you off because I know that in the U.S., for the most of the mainland U.S. had the time change, the hour adjustment. So maybe that's an issue. I'm out in Hawaii right now, and we don't have the hour daylight saving time switch. So I would not be in sync with a lot of the mainland. Kim, hi there, brand new to your channel. Kim, I appreciate you joining. Yeah, if you are just an artist wanting to work either in traditional or digital media, that's something I don't talk about a lot, is, yeah, we do a lot of stuff in digital media here, but the things that I talk about most of the time apply to any media, really. Do you work in traditional stuff? Well, composition, values, anatomy, all those sorts of things stay the same no matter what your media is. So you can apply this knowledge to whatever you want to do. I did remember to get my water, and I remembered to turn off my phone. So I think we're pretty good to get started. But let's run over what the outline was for everybody to know what it is that the artists are trying to achieve. The challenge was to create an image called Vathut, the Carrion Drake. This is a fictional commission for a fictional game. It's just to give everybody an idea of what it's like to work on an actual commission, but the time scale is really compressed. We push it down to 2 weeks instead of more like 6 or 8 weeks that you would likely have on a real commission. Okay, so the Carrion Drake is a cross between basically a vulture and a dragon. And it's got 2 back legs and 2 wings. It has a red face with, again, the looks between vultures and dragons, combination of scales and feathers. It's sort of a fantasy, mythological sort of creature. And it should be in a place called the Soaring Crypts, which is a really kind of foggy tombstone graveyard sort of location. Hey, we got a lot of people in the chat now. Jacob, good to see you. Awa Movies, I assume that's Awa, like from Avatar the movie. Michael, Jonathan, Solarity. And I also did let you guys know I made an adjustment over on OBS. YouTube on the live streaming settings so that I have a higher latency That is, there's more time difference between what you see and what I'm sending out, but it should give you a smoother, higher quality stream in the end. So hopefully that works out okay. But if you say something, it's going to take me a little bit longer to actually see it in the window and be able to reply to it. CO says you missed the upload time on the folder. Yeah, I get that. I'm sorry that you weren't able to make it, but of course that doesn't mean that you can't still submit a final. And that's it. If you want to become a patron and jump in and work on this challenge, that's fine. You don't have to jump in at the very beginning. If you want to jump in, sign up today and then join the challenge, that's fine. All you do is once you sign up, it will unlock the post on the main page over on Patreon. You'll immediately be able to see the information necessary in order to join. Another thing is this morning I finished the exercise pages for the patrons at the 20 tier and above, and it is 20 pages of compositional studies and practices. These are sorts of things that you can do on your own. I'm not giving you feedback on any of these, but I just wanted to give you an idea kind of what's coming up on this next release. And like one is movie magic, and I give you different scenes from movies, and you've got to do little studies from them. This is one page, Return of the King, fantastic cinematography in a lot of those scenes. And so it would be your job to do studies from that and learn from cinematography. Why does that scene have a certain mood? What mood is it? What kind of design? Is it symmetrical? Is it asymmetrical? All these sorts of variances. And learning how to see those and be able to use those in your own work. We also have quite a few pages like this where I give you a brief description of a scene. Then I give you a certain diagram or compositional pattern or design that you need to use in rendering that particular scene. So that's just a little heads up on that. And okay, let's get into the images. We'll just be doing alphabetically. And I appreciate that everybody got their name on their files. Always make sure you do that. Otherwise, I don't know who I'm reviewing. Yeah, let's open it in Photoshop. Anna is first up. I'm going to adjust this so we're not losing some on the bottom of that page. And just skip these around. Okay, I had asked for the creature to be on the ground, not in some sort of flying pose. And he is in a threatening pose, like he's seen somebody and he's yelling at him. Now, let me go ahead and pause there before I get into that particular one. That reminded me, just looking at several of these, it brings to mind that not all creatures look good from the same angles. People can look fine straight on. We have a very nice symmetry to human features, or at least we think so, right? And not all creatures are the same way. It's like an eagle. If you look at an eagle from the front, they're not very majestic looking creatures. And a vulture is pretty much the same way. A lot of dragons are the same way. So one of the things that I've had to deal with many times in art commissions is something coming straight at the camera. And that's not always the best solution. So when you say that there's a creature there and he's being threatening to a character, that doesn't necessarily mean the camera. And in this case, I'm saying that because I feel like this particular creature might well do better if seen from a slight angle. Like, this is a much better angle than seeing it directly from the front. I just want to toss that out there, and keep that in mind as you're working on your pieces. You know, if it's like creature is threatening the viewer, it can still mean that the creature maybe has its neck turned and it's looking this way with its eyes cut. Doesn't necessarily mean that the view, the angle of the head is directly on with the camera. That's a little thing. That's just something that's come up multiple times in my own work. So I want to say that so that you know that you don't necessarily have to do. Now this one I think could work, but what we're not getting is some anatomy going on back here. Let's make a new layer, some color that's actually going to show up. A little bigger than that, I guess. Yeah. Alrighty, good morning. Oh yeah, anyway, movies, and everybody else who might be wondering, yeah, it is probably laggy. I've got lag on my end. It's probably not your connection. It's just pretty unstable out here. So, yeah. Sorry about that, until I can find something better. Okay, let's also look at something else in this, which is a little bit on the anatomy here. This is a very straightforward pose. I'm looking probably not for straightforward. We need something a little bit more towards the camera. It wasn't that one. It was some other file. Oh, no, it was in the PDF. Hang on. Now, I'd give these over to those interested in the challenge. These were for references. I forget offhand where they came from. Anyway, these are references. And now these are good examples of how to pose the character. This one just like would need the head turned, and that would have been okay there. But notice that with creatures like this, you're really looking at spirals and S-curves. I'm gonna just snapshot these so I can open them in Photoshop. And what I want to do with this is address this off the top so that everybody is on the same page with it, and I don't have to go over it on every individual image, because it basically applies to most of the images. And that's what we want to do on this mid-challenge review. Is I don't want to spend so much time looking at every individual piece, but let's look at the broad strokes. What's going to help the most people with the best outcome? You know. So you see here that the pattern is following the neck and the top of the back. We have that design. Now, if the tail was shorter, then all you would have is this, right? We kind of have a loop, a spiral going on there. And same sort of thing here, right? We have that. Again, another spiral sort of thing going on. And so what you want to think about is, can we get the creature to follow a good natural curve somehow, right? Can it do something in these lines? Because that's the rhythm that these creatures are going to be following, their natural bends of their body. And we're sort of missing out on that with Anna's, right? It kind of does that sort of thing. It's just not very organic sort of shape. So what might we do? Let's say if we keep the head about there, and then instead of the extra humps, I mean, you can do kind of a thing like that. You could do that. You could even put the head on the other side, run it off the other direction. But if we were to have the neck coming this way, and then the tail coming around, that would be a little bit better, a little bit smoother. We also want to look at the body. The body is much bigger on the front, and then it's smaller on the back. So you can see it's sort of this bean shape. I'll put some contour lines on there. You can kind of follow that. Where the back end is smaller than the front end. We see that like on this one here. What we're looking at is there's a pretty good chest rib cage, not unlike a human rib cage. Then you've got the pelvic area back there. Then this is usually arched. It arches up on the middle of the back instead of sinking down like a horse will dip in the middle of the back. But most of these creatures are going to have an arch in their back most of the time. We can have a dip in the neck, and that's okay, but then it rolls up into the arch. And then we've got the sucked in tummy there. Now this guy's like undead, so he's missing a lot of his chest. But again, you got that sort of bean shape. Then another thing we want to look at is the anatomy of the wings. Also some confusion here. And there is variations of this, right? There's room to play on this, but let's just pay attention to like what's going on with this one. And that is, you've got the shoulder here, and you can think of it as being very humanoid. You got the shoulder and the rib cage, right? There, you got the neck, and then you have the upper arm. You have the lower arm, and then this is the wrist, and essentially the thing that's being elongated are the fingers. So these are fingers. And that's what's being extended. The arm isn't unlike a human arm. It still bends the same way, except for you're extending the fingers out as the wings. And if you're doing it like this, and there are different variations of wings, like if you do a bird's wing is slightly different, like the way that it connects up with the body. That you notice how far that flap goes down and connects to the body in order to catch the air. And same thing here. Here, upper arm, lower arm, fingers. Now this distance can change in between these. So, not to do with this picture, I'm just going to draw on top. Now, if you were looking at it from the top, yes, yeah, Viboito mentions it's like a bat wing. Yeah, not unlike a bat wing. So what you can play with is, if you've seen this from the top, and you've got the head out here, and then the shoulders, the arms / wings can be like this, and then you have the fingers coming off, yeah. But then you can change up the proportions so that maybe the upper section of the wing is very short. Then the next section is very long. Then you have that section. Or maybe that first section is really long and the next section is really short. And then you have maybe even shorter fingers creating the wing. And then it has, a long connection here. Or maybe this one has a short connection to the body and a long connection there. And so those where you can get a lot of different body shapes out of it and different sort of, I would say personality to the creature. Like this is going to have a much stockier appearance because it's going to be very thick here and very short there. Whereas this is going to be more bat-like, right? It's going to have longer fingers going out. So those are some other things to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go back. And I think that's sort of not, that's not what we got here. Essentially what we have are just some arms with hands and some wingy things attached on the back of it. So let's check about adjusting that anatomy so that we have a more definitive, oh yeah, we need to make that bigger now. Rib cage here. Nice big rib cage. Then it's going to roll back into the torso. Now, the other thing that you could do is running it the other way so that you're circling back on itself. That's where you get more of the spiral. If you don't do it that way, then you really need to go with the C and maybe throw the tail all the way up around, right? And you can do a spiral sort of that way where it pulls back on itself with the tail rather than the body. Yeah, that's probably better. And then you have the wings attaching more likely up higher, right? instead of way down here. That's down by the neck. And then we can run off the arms. And as you can see on this one, I think that's probably a better choice for you, Anna. Anna? I'm not sure how you say yours. Is where the wrist section right there is what's walking on the ground. And as you can see on this one, you could add a little hook there if you wanted to. Anatomically, I don't think that works like if it was an actual animal. But hey, it looks cool, and I think that's one of those artistic license things. So then you could have the wing coming down there. And then it loops back on itself out here, right? And then that is where the rest of the wing goes out there. Now, as far as the face, something that is kind of curious about this, and I was looking at these, I was doing a couple of sketches earlier, and this goes for everybody, not just her, is teeth with the beak. I'm going to go and say, let's not do that. It's just, either you need to go very dragon-like and do the full mouth, right? Do full mouth with teeth, like you would have on a, alligator or something like one of those creatures, and give it the coloring and some of the shapes of the vulture. Or it needs to be a vulture where it has a beak. But beaks with teeth don't really work. They're not, just like biologically, they kind of go against each other. Now, something you could consider doing is doing a beak that comes up and is sort of serrated in a couple of parts, but also make sure that they're fitting into each other, right? When they close, the bottom one has to match that, but it's not going to have teeth on the inside. I mean, you can try it if you want to. I'm just thinking that those two, that there's not such a creature like that. You can feel free to try to make it work, but keep that in mind, all right? I think you could still get some really good shapes out of the beak having a kind of serrated thing, a little bit like this. That one's just more beat up. Or it could even have little pieces of it that are kind of sticking out, but they're not really teeth. They're not going up into a gum section. That's the main difference there. Okay. Arrow says, thank you, Clint. I will rework it. I tried to get it as ugly as I could, but it always turned out so cute. It added some weird stuff. Yeah, I follow you on that one. It is one of those that it is a bit easier to make look cute when you don't want it to. And there's a couple of images that have that direction. So you could consider turning the head a little bit more that way. It's just going to look a bit more goofy if it's more to us like you have here. So I'm going to think perhaps changing it so that the eyes are here, and then it has the beak section a bit over that way. And then also look at it like the jowl thing doesn't really make it look menacing. I think if you were to make it more skull-like, it's going to be more menacing. Something that's more emaciated. These are much tighter features. I think that your direction with having some stuff hanging down, though, is fine. But let's thin it in so that you've got more of a angular bone structure around the eye. And you've got the orbits around the eye, right? And then it sort of sinks in. And then you can have, like, nasty sort of jowly old hair stuff hanging down. But it's not this. It's not chubby cheeks sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. That's good on there. Hopefully that gives you a better direction on it. And let's go to the next one. Anne Marie. And as always, guys, if you've got questions and you want to toss them to me, whether it is, certainly if it's about this particular challenge or this topic, But if you just want to know some other art stuff, want some directions, some pointers, feel free, put them in the chat, and please put @Swatches in the text so it will flag it for me. Catherine says, how do you decide on what's going to be the challenge every week? Just a second, let me take a sip. It is a little random, but what I try to do is rotate through several different topics. We want to have a character design or character scene, environment design or environment scene, and a creature. So those are my main three that I try to hit on and rotate through each one of those. I also try to go between fantasy is the major one that most of you guys want to work in. So most of the time it's going to be about fantasy, but we also want to talk about some other things like sci-fi scenes, and I want to start doing some more traditional challenges as well. And I haven't decided what the next challenge is. I might very well just make it a traditional media challenge instead of a digital, because I've had a couple of comments, people saying, hey, I really enjoyed the traditional one. Could we get back to doing some of those? And I think that's an excellent idea. Otherwise, yeah, rotating through those, and then can we go ahead and connect it to one of the challenges that we've already done? If we can, then I think that's better. It keeps sort of a thorough thread going throughout the challenges, and you can look back to what was being done before and kind of just build off of other concepts. And also, if you guys got some good ideas for concept challenges, feel free to drop them in the comments and let me know. I'm very open. If we got a group of people saying, hey, yeah, that'd be an awesome challenge, I'm happy to follow along. Whatever you guys feel like you want to put some time into. Swatches. When a beak closes, the lower part fits inside the lower part fits inside the lower part. Oh, I think you mean like the lower part fits inside the top part, so they don't have to match. Oh, correct. Right. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking a bit more like a dragon. A dragon's mouth has to match. Depending how the beak is, it has to be similar. Like if one curves up, the other one doesn't want to curve down. Because even if it closed, you'd still have a gap there. I mean, it's got to be similar in shape. No. Clint asks, ever consider doing a prompt on illustrating an action like a spell card from MTG? Actually, Clint, yeah, that was on my list. I was thinking of some sort of spell magic being cast. I don't know that I really want to get into having to do a whole character with it, because people would really focus on that. But I'm considering adding in either an action, a scene that is an action of something taking place, and also a prompt, which we've done before, which was like a mask. And I think those are also good, because like props, you don't have to worry about the anatomy so much, and you really get to focus more on the like surfacing issues on a piece. How do you render that particular texture or that surface or that sort of thing? Yeah, I'd like that suggestion. If there's more of you that would like to do like a spell effect or a prop, then let me know, and we might be able to put that together for that would kick off next week. Okay, now Anne-Marie, let's jump back over here. Anne-Marie, I gotta say, I'm liking this. This is nice. That's a pretty cool shape. It's very iconic with the big fan going out up there. The eye placement, all the anatomy looks pretty good. You might add just a little bit more of that underneath there. Also, I feel like the beak is a bit too perfect of just the curve. What you can see with the vultures and a lot of the other birds of prey is that they have this nice little tip of beak that curves right down right there that allows them to tear off pieces of meat. And that's not what we have here. So I'd suggest maybe straightening out some of this. Then as it gets to the end, then it has a tighter little kink right there on the end. So, okay, that's the strongest part of the image for me, and that doesn't even show up on the light stuff. Aside from that, we're not getting enough of the image. Okay, so this really needs to be following the description, all right? We need to be following that it is a image of this, basically the entire creature, and it's threatening, and it's in a foggy sort of burial ground area. So you're changing the scene up a bit too much. Ladybug is it's taking it in a whole different direction. Now it's like Toothless the dragon who's just watching some bugs or something. So we need to pull back on the scene a lot. So like if we can pull back to somewhere around here, and then get more of the the character out here. Now it's fine. It could be like a big stone thing right here. Maybe this is one of the tombs, and it's got one of its legs up here, and it's sort of working its way around, and it's looking around as it's climbing over this thing. That could work. You might want to kind of adjust where its eyes looking, so its eyes looking more at us. So it's shifted its gaze over towards our direction. Yeah. So yeah, just let's adjust that. Keep the good design here on the head. You'll have to rework this some. I think this bend is good. The neck probably goes up behind it more instead of just straight down. So it needs to come up here, have time to curve back down to the body, which would be back down here. And then I'm thinking you might actually see the lower leg first. Yeah. You'd have to work that out. I'm not sure offhand. Have to work that out. Yeah. Yeah, and then the colors and stuff a little bit. The other thing is check on the anatomy here on this wing. Maybe you did look at something, but this looks a little arbitrary, just sort of muscles everywhere. Remember that this is not, let's say that that's the upper arm section, and then that's like the lower arm, and then that's where it starts the finger stuff. This is not unlike a human. Okay, so you're going to have muscles here. This is going to be like the chest, like chest muscles, and then you have muscle there. You're going to have muscles on the back side. This is not unlike a human arm. I mean, you can just look in the mirror and kind of see how that works. And you're not going to have so many little intersecting. You're gonna have like the what are they on the back side? Delts? I should know that. I can't think of it. But you're gonna have like the chest one going over top here. Then you're gonna have the ones on the back, like things back here. Then you're gonna have the biceps, the triceps on the back side. Then you're gonna have the rib cage part, and then you're gonna have the part that it's on the back where the shoulder blades are. Then this is probably going to be connecting here, right? The wing part over here. Yeah. Okay. Enough there. We need to be moving on. Timmy says hello and good morning for a cup of coffee. Well, I'm glad you're able to join us and just do a little art with your coffee. Well, the size of the ladybug, yeah, it is. Yeah, that's another thing Emmanuel noticed. The ladybug looks pretty big, which means that the carrion drake is pretty small. This whole body shape should be about the size of a bison. So that's the rough that we're working with there. Dabging says, Vathut from MTG or real world mythology, or is this a Cearley creation? Oh, no, this is just something I came up with for the challenge. Now, we have an ongoing... do I have that open? Is this... Nope. I have an ongoing... the fictional game called Spiravel, and that's what I just made up for that. So, it was not a combination that I had seen before. I went out and I Googled around for, like, Vulture Dragon and Buzzard Dragon or Buzzard Drake or, you know, these sorts of combinations. I honestly had not seen a version like that, and I thought it would be really cool. The really dark body and the sort of red face, the combination of, like, the feathers and the scales, and normally you think of a dragon or a drake as being completely you know, birds of prey, right? They go hunt for their food, and not one that is a carrion. It only eats dead things, right? So it attracts to the smell of death and blood and stuff. Yeah. Henry says, how would one greet during nighttime? I think if it's at anywhere near nighttime, it has to be good evening. Yeah. Okay. Now this is where we got several of the things that we talked about earlier kind of going on here. One of the first things is it doesn't seem very intimidating. So we want to approach this and see if we can get some more intimidation in it. Now, styles can change. I've always said that. Styles can change a bit, but it does need to follow the mood and the outline, depending no matter what your particular style is. Where it says, I love the challenge. This is the very first time I drew a creature. Yeah, if you haven't done creatures very much, and I haven't even done creatures very much, they can be a really nice challenge. Okay, so let's look at the form here. We've got that. All right, that's one of the things that we talked about earlier. So we've already got this going on as a nice curve. So we probably want to continue that. And we can continue it by doing this sort of thing. Yeah. But we want to try to create overlap, and we want to try to create a flow to it. So if we keep the head basically where it is, I think the neck, the length of the neck is a little long, but I think it can work. And we've got it going up the whole way, which is nice. Plenty of big space for the chest. Now, one of the things that you're doing here is you're adjusting the anatomy so it has a much bigger belly rather than a bigger chest. So it has like no chest and a big belly. I'm going to put it to you. It can be done that way. It does need a bit more chest here because it's going to have chest muscles to pull those wings. Okay? Now, we're not looking for we're not looking for anatomical perfection. I actually heard a quote. Stanley Kubrick. It was by Stanley Kubrick, and Stanley Kubrick said, "Real is good, interesting is better." I think that is a fantastic quote, and that's a good one to keep in mind. Is real is good, interesting is better. So let's start with something that's real, and then make it a bit more interesting. Real is it needs some chest muscles so that it can beat its wings. And then if you want to go with the big belly, you can, but that's going to be a little harder to pull off because it won't look like it can fly. If it's so bottom heavy, then it won't look like it can fly. And like if we go over here and we look at these, if we would add a belly like this and slim that up, now all of a sudden it's bottom heavy, and then it doesn't have the muscles enough to push its own wings, you know, back and forth, but it's going to throw it off. It won't be able to balance correctly. It has to have the center of mass, the center of its weight, right at the wings. That's where all the weight is, right there. So the head has to be fairly large, and all the weight here needs to be offset by the weight back there, so that the wings are evenly, you know, holding the weight. So that is what I'm thinking is, oh, this way. I'm thinking you can try it, maybe you can make it work, but I'm going to suggest that you reverse that so that we've got a lot bigger chest, and then it syncs up into a lower body, probably back here, so that we can have that going back away from us. So the center comes and does that sort of thing. The tail come off and do that sort of thing. And then we've got the shoulders. And you can have those going opposite to each other. These can be similar. Now, again, these are like normal arms. We can just draw these like normal arms. Right? And then we've got the hands or the fingers coming off from up here. And you can do it like that. There we go. This is probably a good one where go ahead and he's trying to make himself look big, right? And that's what animals do. They puff themselves up by throwing feathers up, by putting their wings out to try to make themselves look more threatening. So I'm going to suggest you go ahead and let those go off the page. I mean, some of them can be on the page, like the ends of them, right? And then the other ones can stay off. It can stay, like we looked at the other one here. You can look at how you want to connect it to the body. And it can be that sort of thing. So it's really thin there, and then it expands out when it gets to the outside. And then that leg can be walking. Oops. This leg's going back, right? And then this one's kind of coming towards us. It's about to take a step. It's sort of like that, but reverse. You know, just do that, but going the other direction. Right. So I think that would help give a better flow to it. Now let's talk about the design of the character a little bit, now that we've gone over the pose. I think this is a good combination. You've got some like long feathers here, some little black feathers, but then there's certain sections like on the neck and the head and the legs that are definitely more reptilian than like the bird-like. And then you're just doing the leathery sort of wings after it fades up here. Hey, I don't have any problem with that. The head, I feel like, is getting a bit too cartoonish. It's a little not threatening. Go take a look at some images of dragons. Remember, we can go fairly dragon-like with it and just start trying to incorporate a little of the buzzard, vulture cues. Now, some of those things is the color. That's a big one. This is a really kind of ugly but also iconic thing, which is the folded, lots of little folds, the extra skin. It can have little funguses, black stuff, hairs, feathers kind of sticking out. If you want to do that sort of thing too, that's okay. Like you can have like this really saggy sort of skin with hairs and feathers sort of sticking out of it. It's a carrion creature, so maybe it has dried blood or, you know, dirty stuff kind of all down underneath its neck. And we've got a bit of that here, but the big sort of bulbous beak, not doing a lot. These are a bit over the top, so let's maybe try to make that a bit more aggressive. Jonathan asked, would it be okay if I would do illustration during character design challenge? I'm asking because illustration is my focus right now, And since my time is limited, I need to invest it wisely. Be doing okay, so you mean like not just doing a character design, but doing probably more like a full scene. Yeah, that would be fine. Whatever, if you need to do an illustration version of the challenge, if it's a character design challenge, you can do that. It's best to go ahead and just leave me a note, or just put a comment on your image saying need to do illustrations right now. Doing an adaptation, and that way I will remember not to critique it as a character design. But yeah, I'll try to work with you on that. And then also be holding you to that direction more. But of course, try to stay with the content of the challenge. If we're doing like a creature design and you give me a character, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm not even going to review it because that's not even what this challenge is about. So yeah, there's a break off there, but you would be within it doing what you're talking about. So Clint Lockwood is got 4 concepts here. So let's step through these and see what we have. Okay, I'm doing some basic black and white studies. Okay, these I love that all of these are very readable. I understand what's going on, and that's not an issue. Very interesting shape here. I don't think it really fits this particular character, but I would keep that design around because I think that could likely be used for something else. Okay. Now, anybody that is not a patron, you're welcome to do this challenge and just post your stuff in the Facebook group and get some feedback from them. I won't be reviewing it like I am on stream, but you're welcome to just say, hey, that's a cool challenge. I want to give that a shot. I've got some ideas. Yeah, the information is out there. You can look for my post that has a link to the description and the referenced files. You can go out there, pick those up, and go ahead and start doing your own stuff. This one isn't. This one's reading more lizard than it is flying creature. So again, that might be one that if you change the pose and it had this coming up here and then down, and then it has its knuckle with the wings kind of folded back. And you've got that sort of thing, then we'd have a lot more visible wings instead of the ends being down there. It's got the knuckles down there. I mean the wrists down there. Then I think that might be the best one because it's a really dynamic view looking up at that guy. And you might want to throw something down here for scale reference somewhere so that we know that it's not a lizard size, right? That, it's a tree or a silhouette of a person standing here or something so that we have scale. Like, even if you had just like a pine tree, and we kind of know how big the pine tree is. Yeah, that one's really interesting. That one's pretty straightforward. This one would probably serve really well in like a card illustration image because it's extremely clear. You've got a really good view of what's going on. It's not difficult to understand, and you can light it in a lot of ways that it's going to work. So that, I feel like if this one was changed so that it was, again, this is very straightforward. I'm trying to think of some way to get a bit more you know, curve out of this thing. If we could do something simple with it, like if its head was down and it was looking more this way, then we could throw the you know, twist the body so that the upper body is here and that, and then you throw the tail off that way, and you have the tail wrapping around there, and then all that could stay pretty much the same with the wings. That would probably be a bit more dynamic in what we're looking at for this particular challenge. This one, I gotta say, for one where you're looking straight at it, it works well. I'm gonna suggest maybe even slimming that up more with the tail, and maybe doing something a bit more interesting with the tail. Oh, I didn't realize I was doing that on the back. Blur. One more over here. Okay. I can't remember, what did the eyes of those things look like? Okay. This is also a good place that you could try some different kind of eye. Or like that. That's a mess. It's ugly, but it works well. Or, you know, multiple eyes. I mean, that's kind of weird, right? Something like that. That's kind of grotesque, and that's what we're looking for. A little grotesque. We've got some. This thing is just disheveled and kind of ugly. Got a little something hanging out of its mouth, right? But you've got a good design going on there. I like this sort of main thing that you've got going here. That's cool. I'm not sure you want it on the bottom because it's a bit too lion-like if you go all the way around. So I'm thinking maybe it flares up on the top. Then you can just kind of get down into a matted mess underneath it, where all of it's just been dirtied up from blood and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, this is also somewhere where, because of the fog and smoke and stuff, that you can start obscuring the back part of the body, so that the head is has a lot more value and clarity and sharper, and then it has a very forced atmospheric effect as it goes back, so it really feels like it's stretching out towards you more. Yeah. As for which one, take those feedback into consideration and do the one that you are most passionate about. And I'd like to see that one. Frederick. Any comments here that I need to catch up on? Yago says, can we see the challenge somewhere, or it's exclusive to patrons? Yeah, Manuel mentions it's available on the Facebook group. Yep. Manuel says vultures have a mane to keep blood from its feathers. They are surprisingly clean animals. Yeah, that is true. They are surprisingly clean animals. But we're trying to push it further, right? We're going fantasy ugly with it. Okay, Frederick. Okay, simpler scene. All right, one of the first things is, let's put this buddy on the ground. All right, so he can... with the smallest change, if you want, you can have one leg sort of tucked up and one sort of just touching down, like he's landing. All right, and you can look up images of birds who are in a landing process, and I think that could work for you. So look at those. Usually one leg touches down first, I think, or do they throw out both feet? I would have to look. I think if you had one, it would be more interesting. Then that one's kind of pulled back up a little bit more, and maybe there's something that he's about to land on. Then if that's the case, what they try to do is they waft with their wings, because they're trying to land as slowly as possible. So they're putting these big gusts of air down to slow them. This is more of a gliding position. That's when they go straight out and they're trying to go for speed. Right? They're just trying to go forwards. So what we want to do is create this sort of thing where they're throwing air forwards with the body of their wings. So this is going to come up. You're going to have the shoulders and the elbow position somewhere there. It's going to come out to here. I'm not sure how long you want that section. And then you got like the finger section. And then that's going to connect something like that. And then if you're, depending on how long it is, they can actually loop around in front of them. I've done that sort of thing on some of my images. So they're wafting in a lot of air with that. Okay. You got the big chest. That's good. Smaller, lower body. That's good. Legs seem like a decent size. And we do want to address, again, the flow of the body, right? We've kind of got a weird thing going on in the body like that. So we can keep this, but then we have to keep that curve going. What you don't have is something that goes back on the curve, right? Like that. So it's got to keep that rhythm going. You can think of it like a ribbon. If you were to fly it in the air, like a flag. That if you pull this end, essentially it's going to stay in that same pattern, but this end is just going to go forwards. And then that end is going to pull up. And it's going to remain in that. It's just going to follow the leader, right? And it's going to follow that. So wherever the head just was, that's where the body is going to be. Wherever the body was, that's where the tail is going to be. And it's just going to follow itself. And especially if it's moving. Now, if it's completely stationary, it might wiggle its tail or something. But for this one, we probably want to see something more like that, or you might be able to throw it out a bit further. And then once it finally gets out this far, you can start looping it back on itself. But it has to be a nice gentle curve to it, and it's not going to have like a little kinky bend in it. No. Another thing is take a look at the neck for the size. We don't want to get too thin on the neck for the size of the head. Now, having a very back eye, like the eyes are very far back on the head, I think that can work. Going some big scales on it, I think that can work. But perhaps size the head down a little bit, and then let's beef the neck up. If the neck is very long, those neck muscles have to be decently powerful to hold the neck up that's very long. Like this one, and you can look at these, like the size of that neck. These are decent, right? And same thing, it's not unlike human anatomy. I mean, you got the trapezius up on top, and then you've got the spinal column, and then you have to have some other muscles. The muscles coming this way, other muscles going the other way. So start building the layers up a little bit. Now, that'll be giving you a better direction. We're just going to get more dynamicness out of the pose, and make sure we're having him grounded or much closer to being grounded, just to follow the direction of the image. Clint says, awesome, thank you so much for the review. You're welcome. Thanks for joining, man. And thank you for everyone being able to join out over on Patreon. Seriously, you guys are what makes the channel possible. If you're new to the channel, or you just haven't caught it, but you realize this channel does not support me. I support the channel. I spend about 20% of my week, 7 or 8 hours a week, being put into the channel and the Facebook group and stuff. Usually about 8 hours a week, and that's a full work day. So that's essentially saying taking out a full work day every week to work on something. That's a significant amount of time slash money to put into it. And all you guys who join out on Patreon, um, it helps to make this possible. Otherwise, I have to just not do it as often so that I can try to, make ends meet. So thank you. All right, we're to Gilherm. Interesting shapes. A lot of good anatomy stuff going on. You've obviously thought through it all. I'm buying a lot of the musculature. You've obviously looked at anatomy of how a lot of wings and stuff work. What can we do in order to punch this up? Oh, something else, guys. Something else I've got to mention. On several of these images are not following the direction. So I've got to pull that up. I meant to mention that right one of the first things off bat, but I forgot. Image size is 3000 by 2200. It's the same ratio as a magic card, right? That's horizontal, 3000 horizontal, 2200 vertical. I'm afraid that actually affects some of these. Anna, this needs to be horizontal. It's 3000 horizontal, not vertical. So we're going to get more of a wider image out of that. Like this one, that's not the right ratio. That's square or very close to square. So we need to make sure that if you are not using that ratio, you need to switch it over to that ratio. Because it's going to affect how you lay out the image and your composition and everything. Okay, another thing, we don't need layers. All right, just when you submit an image, please just submit JPEGs. But, okay, that aside, we've got, because we're looking down on this guy, our viewpoint is right about here. Our eye level is right about here. And that's where perspective is. Everything is perspectivizing to that point. All right, we can see your perspective lines. And we're actually higher than he is. And it looks like he's bowing to us. And that's not threatening, right? What's threatening is if he is bigger than us. So what happens if we switch the horizon line to here, and now he's higher than us? Well, that's scarier. Now, and we can't just do that. Oh, now it's fixed. No, that doesn't work, of course. I mean, as we do have layers, let me go and turn that off. Let's turn these off. Which one of these? There. Let's turn that off. This would have to be adjusted, that the feet have to be about on the same level. The claws. And then, what happens if we get this, right? Instead of this, where he's doing that sort of thing, like, he's up higher than us and he's tilting his head down to see us. That's more menacing. And then if he were to have his wings bigger up over us, right? They can still be long like that. That's fine. Again, that is more menacing. So let's try to shift the camera down so that he seems like a threatening position, a threatening creature. Okay, now let's look at the face. Is a little wonky, the design. Let's see what we can do in order to make that a little scarier. Like, get the ugliest, scariest things about this and combine it with a dragon. So, maybe what you do is, okay, that eye is kind of cool. Would also be kind of cool is like if he had another eye, and that's kind of weird. And then What if he's got like some draggy things coming off of his beak, right? And then he's got like little spiky things. You know, looking at this dragon, maybe, yeah, spiky things are kind of cool. Put some spiky things coming off of here, and they kind of go into being different sort of scales. Yeah, that's kind of neat. And then we've got like some down underneath there. Maybe it's got a couple of spikes up here on the front too. That's kind of neat. Oh, this has got like a lot of little stuff going on there too. Maybe he's got like little hairs, little dark hairs that stick up in there. That could work. What else could we do? We can add like ridges, right? It's different sort of pivots and ridges along this. So now we're kind of combining these things and just getting the most powerful kind of aggressive thing from these guys and the ugliness and the coloring of those guys and coming up with something new. And I feel like this is kind of just got the goofy part of the bird than nothing else. So revise that, go back in there, see what you can get from the bird. Don't go too human with the eye there. And when we look at this eye, it's like really big and bulbous, right? And we could go more that direction instead of an eye that's just nicely put into the little socket. You know, if the eye was almost like bulging out on either side, and the skin is all kind of wrapping around it, and it's got all those extra skin parts, folds and stuff, and then you've got like the nose, nostrils there. Maybe it has like the little spikes coming up here. It's got to have enough of a jaw that it could swallow, so make sure that it's got enough there. Yeah. So, you know, push it that direction. Try to make it a little bit more aggressive. Yeah. Gilherm. What do we got? Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, you sent that in. Take a look at that. Same sort of thing here, right? With the posing and the rhythm of the body. Now, let's talk about the design first. The design, I think, is really good here. There's a lot of good stuff going on. You're doing the long feathers, which is pretty cool. Doing scaly, skinny stuff on a lot of the body. The face is adequately disturbing. Yeah, that works. A couple of things on that. These do not align. If you're going to do two similar things, they need to be aligned. So, like the tilt of the head is this. So those need to be aligned the same thing too. That would end right there. Or this one needs to end up there so that they're even on either side. If you don't want them to be even, then throw some more on there so it's just this random pattern, right? And that's the way you kind of break it up and justify it. Okay, what else? These don't make sense. Just things sticking out. It's okay to have the scales. That word was not coming to me, but again, let's think a little bit of the anatomy, and the same thing with the feathers, and that this thing flies this direction. Which way do the feathers go? The opposite direction, right? Because you're not going to fly with the feathers pointing towards the direction. It has to go the other way for them to overlap each other and the air to flow off of them. So the feathers are going to come out here and lay down that direction, right? And they're not going to go up. So let's make sure that we're going to follow some of the basic anatomy there. And same thing with the scales. Scales are going to go this way. Now some of the skulls could have like maybe a little thing that comes off the end of it that's a little pointy, but just straight out spikes on the chest are kind of weird. Okay. And on this, let's make sure that the upper body is following that enough. I mean, it is a rib cage. It is going to have actual ribs. It's going to have a cavity down there where the belly, the almost non-existent belly would be. But that aside, the same thing with this is look at the pattern. Yeah. Creature's not really going to do that. So how can we get some more flow out of it? I think this is good. I think this is a good place that... I'm just curious. I've not tried this. I'm not sure it'll work. But just for kicks. Let's see. I'll say here, if we were to do it this way, now all of a sudden we can have that, right? It comes up, and we've got our upper torso basically coming at us. Then it loops down the back side. And then we have the lower body down here. Yeah. So, I mean, I think maybe even switching it that direction would be better. Otherwise, it needs to have a thing where it's kind of standing up on its hind legs, right? It's trying to stand up, and it's doing that sort of thing, right? And it's got its legs down here. And its tail is probably going to be, yeah, following that sort of. And I feel like if it's going to do that, it's really going to be standing up underneath itself. So the idea is good. A lot of the character design ideas are good, but we got to get more of that flow to what a creature pose is like. And the same thing with human anatomy, right? Humans don't bend in certain ways. Like if we're walking, we're balancing our weight in certain ways. There's a rhythm to the movement. With these, if you're going to do it with like the feathered wings, then take a look at how bird wings are. Usually you're going to have a section right here that goes from about the first joint in the first section, and it's going to have a semicircle of 3 or so layers for that first joint. Then it's going to start having another couple series of wings at that point. Those, so you got like a curve and a curve, not just one big curve out. So, yep. Hopefully that helps you. Get you on your direction. Save. James. Okay, James Cactus. Vathut. One actually tossed in the coloring. Yeah, the main thing is, remember, most of the body should be pretty dark. At least with dark feathers. And it has the iconic red face to it. So it is falling pretty close. You might get that skin color and make it a little bit grayer and a little bit darker just for the red to stand out, because right now the lightness of that skin tone is really kind of competing against the red. And just talking about color a little bit, since this is one of the few that does have color, and we've not really touched on it so far, I'm gonna pick up one of these other brushes. And if this has mainly gray back here, and it will because it has Just a foggy sort of scene. And this is darker. It just helps that red to stand out even more. Yeah. So something on that line, just as you start adding more lighting and stuff. But let's take a look at the design. A lot of this is working. I'd say let's either push it towards dragon mouth or do beak, bird beak, but let's not do beak and teeth. Yeah. Sergio, haven't been on Swatches Live in a long time. Hey, how's it going, man? Well, thanks for joining in. We got some excellent entries for the challenge this time. Oh, I forget that has smoothing on. That's why it's so slow. Okay. Oh, something feels a little off on that pose. I was wondering if flipping it would help me kind of think of it a bit different. I mean, mostly it works. The tail folding back under the body seems a little strange. I'd expect to maybe see it go out of frame for a second, and then maybe it loops back. I think that'd be a bit better. Otherwise, it's kind of got the tail between its legs sort of thing, and that's usually not an aggressive pose. That's an afraid thing. This... Yeah, I know, you're trying to go with like a different sort of... trying to think of what the rhythm is on this, or how we could get a little bit of rhythm out of it. Because right now, you're treating it basically like a man pose, and you're throwing on a long neck and a tail and wings. And it feels like more like a man in a suit rather than a creature. Alright, if you wanted to go this way, okay, without having to redo a lot, what could you do? I think this has to change somehow. It's very passive. I'd be curious if maybe there was something over here that his arm could be grabbing hold of, like it's kind of bent up around, right? He's got the wing kind of coming back here, and so he's walking over that, and that also keeps you out of this corner. And that's one of the problems with this scene compositionally, is that everything weights down to this corner, and there's nothing stopping us here. And if we were to do that, we could put something here, and then we're actually having him physically hold himself kind of from there. Yeah. And then if we were to be able to throw his tail further into the background, then we don't have to have his legs so far forwards because his center of gravity would be further back. The tail would be pulling more weight back that direction, allowing his legs to be back further in the scene. So he doesn't look like he's just running at us. And then it can be more about this big upper body, the wings, and the head. Yeah. A little confusing there. I think you're going to be able to pull off a good image, but make sure you address some of those issues. Yeah, he's doing it where it's like that, and instead of the wings coming from like the finger section, that it's more like a glide suit that humans wear, like a flying squirrel, where it's just connected from the wrist down onto the body, and you can that's possible. Just make sure that you understand that that's what you're doing, James. In which case, it kind of needs handled differently, yeah, than what you see I've been talking about on some of the other things. Otherwise, it needs to be changed. Yeah. Jonathan. Now, Jonathan, if I recall correctly, we were chatting, and he said something about wanting to learn better 3D rendering and learning how to incorporate that into his work. So that's why we've got this scene. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but I think it was you that I was talking to about that. So that's why we got 3D, and of course 3D is allowed. I'm going to basically review it the same way as anything, and what I would like to see for the final is you simply using this as a base and then doing your painting on top of it. Because honestly, this is not a bad way. I mean, if you're good at 3D modeling and you can put it together fairly quickly, then this works out a lot of the anatomy, perspective, and lighting issues for you. And you can just go in to start painting all of the textures and details and stuff on top of your base scene. Okay, the tone is great. The colors are great. That's all really thumbs up. You've handled that correct in the other program. I don't know what program you're using. If anything, you might want to just pop the red a little bit more as not necessarily a completely realistic thing, but just as a visual punch of color. It's nice. Okay, the body has the right sort of proportions. I buy the pose, right? Now you're doing it where it has basically one body section. It doesn't necessarily have an upper and a lower. You might want to change that a little bit, but I can see that working. Okay, Jonathan says that he's working in Blender. Okay, that's cool. Now, my knowledge of 3D programs is very limited. I mean, I understand how they work and that sort of thing. I don't know how to use them, so I can't tell you how to make any adjustments in your program. Again, we've got that, which is the sort of thing that you would expect if it was just standing there kind of looking around. But since we're illustrators and we're trying to get more dynamic feeling out of the image, we want to get some more flow. So what if what if the the neck was doing that sort of thing. He's looking this way, and then we can get the tail coming off, doing that sort of thing. And so there, now it has a nice little loop pattern to it. That's more interesting visually, and it keeps us in the image more, because this just makes us look like that. But that sort of change keeps a rhythm going. And you might want to offset these legs back just a little bit, instead of just having the shoulders like right over top of the thighs. Yeah. Or maybe moving. I don't know that you necessarily need to move the wings forward any. I feel like maybe just moving the where the thighs connect back a small amount. From there, what else? I don't know what your design is for all of this. You could think about like a walking pose for the legs. If it is sort of in a prowling position, then you might have like one leg is back and it's kind of lifting its heel, right? And then the next leg is coming forwards and is tucked up as it's moving its leg. And so you got a bit of action as it's kind of prowling around. And yeah. That could be fun. I don't know if you go... the hand things on the end are bothering me a little bit. Because essentially these are fingers. These are what the fingers are. And then we just have extra fingers. What my suggestion is you can throw in the little artistic thing of it having like a spike, right there. I think that would be better served than having 3 little T-Rex fingers, sticking out. That would work a little bit better. Now, if you want to play that up even more, you can have like ones back here, which anatomically, I don't know how you can fly with with those there, but maybe we can make it work. And then also make sure you're looking at what your secondary shapes are. Do you have some of these sorts of things going on? Do you have, some sort of design, these things sticking out? Yeah. So, that's the sort of direction. And these sorts of changes might be the sort of thing that you want to do in Photoshop and go, okay, well, I'm going to sketch on this for an hour and play around with what the direction is I want, and then go back and make those changes in Blender so that you're not trying to manipulate all the 3D and experiment in the 3D. So from there and be like, okay, I'm happy with that. Now let's go make those changes in Blender so that it will automatically update, the lighting and the shading and the perspective so it's all accurate again. Then export it and start painting back over that. But I'm happy with the direction here. Small thing on the background. This shape just kind of going right up by the body and back down. Probably it'd just be more interesting if we don't have that shape back there. Or if we do, then let's not make it... let's make it so that sections of it are just faded out. So we have hard edge on a couple of different spots. And I know that you probably get into painting this and might make these adjustments your own. I just wanted to mention it just in case. And so we have fade in and fade out of soft edges and hard edges. And also make sure we have some interesting shapes back here. What we're trying to do is maybe have like some sort of tomb shape, gravestone shapes back here. We want to help keep the character in the image. So if we can have shapes that sort of lean like that, then it's going to help keep us in the image. It's sort of creating a bubble, a frame around it. Same thing is like back here, if you want to have some sort of monuments or totems or something, just interesting little silhouettes back there. Or trees, you could have some little barren trees. That works too. And some of the reference images I gave, it was just bare trees. And if you want to incorporate those in your image, there are plenty of free tree brushes that just have dead trees. It's just craggly limbs and stuff. and they're just silhouettes. So you can just put your silhouette in there, drop the opacity down, paint it out a little bit, and you got a nice little visual shape back there. Okay, man. Thanks for entering. Enjoyed seeing it. Don't see 3D much on my channel, so good change. Leonardo. Okay, Leonardo. I like the design. Design, definitely one of the stronger designs as far as the creature. But as this is about the creature more than it is anything else, let's adjust the composition. I don't have much to say about this itself. We just have most of the image is the background. So we can grab Mr. Monster and do this. That would be more effective. For one, it creates overlap. Right here, there's no overlap. All right, no, really no overlap between anything. So here we can get some overlap between the beak and this back thing, which, again, we probably don't want leaning into the image. We want to lean the other way, or we want to have like a path that kind of, you know, leads like this, trying to keep us out of that corner. And we can have like a series of things back here. And then also, we're not getting anything on the back part of the body. And then check the wing here. What we're doing is having a wing that is only a forearm. And I feel like we should be having... It should be connecting to the body somewhere and working its way around to here. This looks like really thick compared to the size of the wing. Like the whole body seems pretty big compared to the wing size. So again, this is another one that you might want to consider changing that to a knuckle, and then changing this to the big part of the wing. And then you've got the wing folded back there. And then it could have, like, you know, the little hook there on the wrist if you wanted to, I guess. And it would just make the wing feel bigger, and so that it could actually support that body, because we're not getting enough to do that. The other thing is, maybe we could still get the tail somewhere to know that it has a tail, wrapping the tail around somewhere. Yeah. This is particularly nice. I like the combinations here. Make sure that we're not getting too bulky on this part up here. Usually this part doesn't have much muscle. It's basically just to hold the wing attachment to. It doesn't need to be very strong. So we could probably thin that up a little bit. Yep. This is really basic. Let's see about making this the runes of something. We've got some big blocks here. Maybe some little statues that have broken away. And then the dirt sort of collapsed down on that. Like it was some sort of, you know, big statue that fell over and it's got moss and dirt and stuff on it. Or it used to be a set of stone steps leading up. You know, that sort of thing. And so that it has a bit more visual interest to it. Yeah. And I'm kind of hoping you're going to go with a white eye. With this kind of just, you can't tell what it's looking because it's all cloudy and white. That would be kind of interesting. Okay, hopefully that helps. Thank you for entering. Jacob says, thank you for the advice. I tried to change the pose and make it better. Yeah, look forward to it, Jacob. I'm sure you're going to do something cool. Jonathan says, awesome advice. Thank you very much for that. If I will be able to incorporate them, be a masterpiece. Jonathan, you're on the way. I like the initial 3D design that you came up with, that you're building from. and I think that's going to dramatically help you pull off a stronger piece. Okay, now we're looking at Marcel's image. Okay, Marcel's doing a lot more design with it before committing to just a single idea. So let's step through some of these. Nope, give me yellow, a little bit better. A little bigger, maybe? Yep. Okay, let's zoom up over here. Yeah, you're right. We're doing horizontal, not vertical. But all of these could work. You like these two comps the most. I think for this particular challenge, let's go with this one. Because I think this one's good for a particular kind of scene, but the whole looking down on him thing doesn't put him as a major threat. But this one does. And the idea that he is wrapping himself around this sort of tower or spike or whatever it is, A+, man. And look at these beautiful shapes. These are probably the best shapes we've had in this challenge. Talking about the rhythm, I don't have to tell you how to do it. You get exactly what's going on here. Love it, man. All the right stuff. Okay, so just on that, let's make sure that we're adjusting the crop, though. Because we have a lot more space out here where we don't need anything. We need a bit more space by the head side once you go over to the final image. So a bit over there would be better. Okay. Now let's talk about some of these. Good, I like it. I like that you're not, you're sort of playing up. This is, it's probably more accurate, is that it's rounded here, and then it gets a little bit more pointed on the bottom. Yeah. You see that if you look at different like animal shapes, they tend to do that. They get like a little pointier on the bottom than what humans do. Humans are more flat with their rib cage and stuff. Let's take a look at some of the heads. Yeah, definitely more goofy. You know, like these sorts of things, even though they might not fit for this particular challenge, it's always worth keeping these around because they might very well be good for something else. And, you know, go back and work on those. I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's not enough detail on that. I think you're just working out composition on that. So let's say you're doing that. Number one, King Vulture reference. This is the closest one to what I was thinking of. Like this one and this one. Yeah. This is the waddle thing. It's not really what I'm looking for. Let's make sure that we're having enough of the... Make him a little darker. Not like he's got like stuff on him, right? He's dirtier. This is not a pretty creature. So we got some stuff hanging off of him. It's pretty filthy. I think you're going with like bone shapes there, which is pretty cool. We got to keep the same color though. You can put flesh tones on them somehow, or I don't know. Maybe you're going with this, which could also work. Essentially, he doesn't have any skin, and that the red isn't coming. Normally, the red is coming from the skin, right? This kind of red skin. That it's almost like the muscles don't have skin over them. And that's why it looks red. And that could be an interesting idea. And these are good shapes. Let's make sure that we got like some little feathers and stuff going on in there. We need to make sure we don't want to get too shallow on that. He still's got to have his little brain inside of there. So you've got to have just a bit more, a little maybe more for the brain section there. He's just so thin around the eyes, it's like he doesn't actually have a head there. I feel like it's all, unless the brain's back there, but that seems a little odd. I'm trying to think if there's any of these other pieces that I like. This is another one, like maybe multiple eyes could work. I'm trying to think something just to take it out of the ordinary a little bit. You already have such good shapes, and it's like, can we push it one bit further? Or even if it doesn't have eyes, you know? Maybe this is a creature that it works all by smell and hearing somehow. That, you know, you can just take eyes out of it, and then you've got something else. Yeah. If we do this scene, make sure that we're having something for scale reference. We don't know what size this is, so something even like a little stairway that, you know, is broken. That we know how big steps are, so we can kind of equate that. Or if there's maybe an old iron fence, you know, we can kind of get an idea how big that is. For, you know, dragons, sometimes dragons are the size of buildings, sometimes dragons are little guys. So when you do it, make sure that we have something to scale on that. And be sure we're looking at the... I think you probably will, but make sure we're not forgetting the sort of designs on the neck with the skin, the way that it kind of folds back on itself, creating like Z patterns, all that little extra skin around there. Very good, man. Marcel, you have some killer studies here. I feel like this is probably not your first time to do creature designs. So, yeah. Looking forward to seeing what the final is, and we can talk over more of light and shadow, that sort of stuff. Okay. We have got like a deadly looking sucker here. This is Marco's. Alright, Marco, you've given us a very emaciated sort of creature. I think the eyes being that size is making it a little too cartoony, and with those horns. So let's try variations of it. I don't think we need to go quite this far with it. Maybe the eyes being a bit smaller. A little bit smaller. And remember, birds have their eyes, they're not like humans. They don't have eyes on their front. They have eyes more on the sides rather than on the front. And that's what we have here. You're treating it more like a human, where his eyes are more on the front. But we want to put these more on the side. He's got that sort of shape, right? So he can look out to have a wider field of view than we do. And then the horns need to follow the anatomy. Like that. That could work. Might want to redo it a little bit. Probably want to throw that over there. I'm just trying to get this curve so that it's not quite so tight. With horns need to connect into the head in a way that is more natural. And these horns are just kind of going up. Likely they're going to, if you're going to have horns on a flying creature, they need to go back more. And this sort of design isn't used anywhere else, so it's likely going to be more bone-like. Something like the protrusions that you might see on a dragon, or look at dragon horns and kind of see the way that they work. Like it's going to be going off probably the arch here and maybe going back. So you've got that sort of divot. And so it's playing off of the shape that's coming around from the eyes. And then you can maybe have, you know, some smaller ones kind of coming back there if you wanted to do that. But I'm not sure that you even need horns. I don't know if that's adding that much without just making it look kind of odd. Make sure that we're keeping with the flow of the body. Again, I can't really get where that makes sense. This is being turned in this direction. And then this is basically straight forwards. And that means that the beak needs to be straight forwards as well, which isn't helping us a lot. So I'm going to say, keep the beak closer to where it is, which is more like that. And then we shift that side of the face around. So there, that'd be a bit better. And if you want to put some horns in, it's a bit like that. And then we can probably do this, use the opposite curve. You want to continue that same angle and that same curve. And then it can loop around the back side and we can have that sort of thing going on. Okay, what else? Here. Make sure that this not getting too saggy there. If we want to show him being emaciated, that's going to be a lot more in the belly. That it's going to be really sucked up there, and maybe we can see some rib lines. But you're really not going to be very emaciated here, because that's what he uses to actually fly. And that's where the ribs are coming off of here and coming around. So you're not going to get thin there. I mean, that's where the ribs are. It's going to hold that shape pretty well. Maybe just a little bit out there. Yeah. Okay. Let's move this out. Make that a little broader. Feels like he's closing in a bit much. And then, of course, you have to figure out what you want for the background. But yeah, I think those sorts of adjustments could work. The feathers can definitely work, scattered feathers. Make sure that we're doing this. This should be a full illustration. This isn't just a character design. So you got to start thinking about things like colors and values and the composition of the rest of the image. Now, I've been saying your name wrong for a long time, but he sent me a note and said it is pronounced Mikowai, which I didn't know what that little mark was on the letter. So it must make it sound like Y. So Mikowai. Okay, this works really well as a composition. You're using up a lot of the image for the creature, all right? The subject matter. Again, I'm the tail going through the legs thing. I don't know how I feel about that. Feels like he's like throwing his tail out to hit something. That's one of the first things I'm going to think about trying to change is do something else with that tail. He might be throwing it up behind him. Okay. Big wings, that's good. This is reading pretty well. I good shapes. He's edging onto being a little puppet-like. I'm just like this foof of feathers, the eye back further on the head, the long beak, the little Muppet-like. So I'm gonna just note that to you and see about maybe adjusting it where we could get some proportions a little closer to this. Or maybe moving the eye further up on the head. We've got a little bit more head back here. And having the... on the wrong one. The way that the beak is working, that the beak could be smaller and this could be more flesh. We've got the beak basically on that section, right? Not coming all the way back here, but coming back to about here. Yeah. Yeah, Emmanuel brings up kind of what I was thinking about. He looks like he's more surprised, and I think that's a good way to put it. It feels like he is backing away from something. He's like, whoa. And that's why the tail is there, because the tail is going to follow wherever the body just was. So the tail means that he was just here, and then he's going that direction, right? But we should be thinking that he's coming this way, right? He's going towards the thing that he wants to attack. And usually, I'm trying to call. It seems like, from my observations, when a bird is landing, it does this. It puts its head high, and it kind of backs up, its upper body up, and throws its wings down. So it tries to get the highest view that it can of where it's about to land. And if we're doing about to land pose, then that means that it's probably going to be doing this. Right? He's going to be doing that. So the head itself might not change that much, but we're going to have a distinct difference. You could look at a swan that's coming in for a landing, and it's going to do that, right? It's going to have... Let me clean that up. It's going to have that dip, but then it's going to have that. And then it'll have the... Right? So you can see how that sort of changes it. How else could you do it? If he's flying forwards, if he wanted to be more aggressive, then let's stretch that head out. I mean, we could even get the head, out to this sort of thing. So that I'm trying to think. Right now, the head is just sort of lost in the darkness of the body, and that if we could get the head out a bit further, then let's just do a simple shape for the head. And then you got like the neck here, and then maybe we can adjust that wing so that that wing is just turned a little bit more, and that way we have the silhouette of the head actually breaking out, and that shape shows up a little bit better. Then we can show the body is back here, like he's just flying in, and then he's kicking his feet up. Right, so now it feels more like he's swooping down. He's stretching out, and he's about to grab after something. And he's about to touch down, and then that tail shows us where he just was, which is he just swooped in from this direction. And yeah, I think that would be better. It wouldn't take a lot of changes to that, but it should but we want to get a little bit more aggressive out of it. Yeah. This is good though. I like your wing rendering. I like a lot of the textures and stuff you got going on. And I know that this is just super rough back here, but that's basically what we need. So, you know, just decent amount of little detail. You can have like a little, you know, some marshy little grass, puddles of water. Sort of what you got going on right now. And then just hazy shapes. Yep, so that'll all work back there. So, all right, man. Good stuff. Yeah, just the main thing on that is just make it look like he doesn't look scared and that he's backing away. We want to give more the idea that he's the aggressor and he's coming towards them. Orly says it's actually correct for a Vulture landing. They have a super have the head super low, but I guess it could be tweaked for the sake of the image. Yeah, that is one of those things. Like I said, real is good, interesting is better, and also clarity of the image kind of overrides everything. I don't know how a Vulture lands. I just have to look at it and say, does it convey what the average person would think that it's trying to convey? Yes? Okay, good. If it doesn't, then it needs to be changed. Okay, Nick. Note for you, Nick. I used the little head section right here on the thumbnail for this video. I thought it's a nice little, it's powerful little pop to the design of that face. A lot of emotion in there. So if that is not okay with you, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be leaving that as part of the video thumbnail. Okay. You're putting him not outside, but inside one of the big tombs. That works for me. That can work. I'm not sure how you're going to be handling the lighting, seeing as how we're inside of a tomb. You could consider, like, you don't even have to show it, but maybe between this pillar and this pillar, back up in there, is a broken ceiling or a window or something, so that we've got some light, basically illuminating, you know, some moonlight or soft light, kind of illuminating this part back here, so it's lighter. Then we get a nice silhouette of a darker tones from the creature, right? And then maybe you have a bit of light up here. We can imagine that there is a torch, you know, in the foreground. You don't have to show the torch, but there's torch light. So you're getting some torch light on this near stuff. And so you got warm light here, but then that warm light goes into shadow to be more silhouetted back here. And then you have the cooler light at the softer tones from the light back there. This could be a really dynamic scene, man. And very, very strong situation to work with. Okay, yeah, I'm assuming that you're just doing this. We got a comment saying that the values are not handled real well. But yeah, I think you're just blocking everything in, trying to make everything understandable. I don't think these other values are going to be working with in your final image. Design-wise, I don't have much, man. This is very effective for the type of creature. I like that you gave the sunken eye look to it. Like it's very bony, and the eye socket's just kind of sunk back in its socket. You do have the teeth in it, so again, I'm gonna kind of It sort of works on this one though, because you're going a bit more of the dragon mouth to it. In which case, you might want to meld the beak into the face a little bit more. Just be careful how you handle that. You might treat them less like teeth than more like just like little slivers that kind of come up. Make it less like a normal mouth teeth than just sort of ridges inside of the mouth. Yeah. The tongue is good. I like the additional little like saliva being there. The twist of the tongue. Those are all nice little bits of motion. This is a good rhythm. Right? You've got that sort of thing going on. I'm wondering about the wings though, because we don't have much actual wing section. And this is a pretty large amount of body. I'm thinking of how you might do that. Well, what we could do is, like on the finger sections, these last sections, your fingers have joints. So these can bend some themselves, depending on the creature. We could have it come down here and then having them have a bend as well, which allows us to have the wing expand out and back and cover more area that way. I think, if it was me, I would approach it that direction, so that it feels like it has enough wing to do that. Another thing you could think to do to address that is to have the wing connect up here, would be like from the torso section back up to the wing. And so you see it kind of connecting from back there as well. That could be helpful. I was thinking about the posing, like either the legs need to be nice and wide, like it's steadying itself, getting ready to pounce, or maybe it's walking this direction, in which case one leg is probably picked up and the claws are sort of pulled back on itself, and it's taking a step. It works pretty good right now. Just consider that. I'm running off, and I'm thinking about all the colors and the lighting and stuff. I almost feel like I want to throw in a little. Well, that doesn't work because I'm not on the right tool. Yeah. Just saying, like, value-wise, now if this is sort of darker, you have these nice ridges. These are such nice shapes. The shapes are going to be detail. Detail isn't really going to make those any better. So let's use them to the maximum amount of visual impact with the least amount of work. which is to use them more in silhouette. And then back here, this is very low. This is like almost just gray. That's going to be half the darkness. Yeah, I'm thinking that direction, and then you can have some light, hitting like on here, some on that, on the face, and then something just a little light here so you can see where that light direction is coming from. Yeah. Yeah, a really, really solid piece that you got going there, man. All right, two more. Travis. Right. Okay, more of a lot of designs. Let's pull up. Vathut design sketches. I've got like a. What are those? The spiky frogs, horned frogs. And good little sketches, man. Little pen sketches. These are nice. That looks a bit like How to Train Your Dragon, one of the dragons that has the big frill behind it. That's interesting. That's kind of cool. It's got like the tie around the eye area for I don't know what reason, but it looks neat. Nice shapes back there on the neck. Komodo skull. So like from a Komodo dragon. Okay. Working out the anatomy, mixing different kinds of creatures. All right, so like a bird leg versus a lizard leg. Okay, that sort of thing. Loving your pen sketches, man. Playing around with the colors. Yeah, not the red full body. More like one of these. Browns, grays. More grays or even blue grays for the body. You could do browns. That could work too, as long as they're not too strong. And that would be the main scene. And you got that coming all the way up here. Okay, you've got a heavy amount of perspective on the wings that isn't necessarily consistent with the rest of the image. I like the overall feel of this scene. Let's give a color here. Yeah. There we go. So like this wing is massive, and it even comes here to the foreground. But that wing's not that much further away, and it's much smaller. I don't know that we either. If we need to keep, if we keep this, then this wing needs to be bigger. You know, and we need to see it kind of curling back or something like that. This all looks pretty good. This is definitely more dragon-like. Make sure we don't lose too much. You might really look at making the eye much closer to being a buzzard, vulture, and make sure that we're having the colors from the vulture And consider adding in some of the wrinkly skin. A couple of the hallmarks of the vulture. Just make sure that we go in there and we're not just doing dragon. Okay, not just dragon. On the head, at least. Okay. I find the claws almost comically large. They're exceptionally large. Or long. Thinking if we cut those down by about that much, 20%. I feel like that would be better. Yeah, that's just very, very big. This is another one where you could think about adjusting the design so it has. I mean, usually feathers do that sort of thing, so that it has that series, and it has sort of like that series. And all right now we have is the one series. It comes from the body all the way out. I think that's why you're having a hard time trying to connect it, because that's not really how it works. Like, you normally have a section kind of here that overlaps with another section, and then there's the long feathers that start from the feathers joint and they come down from there. So just double check your references for wing anatomy and see if we can get something a bit more accurate on that. But standing on this is cool. Having this rhythm is very nice. This is also one of those things that compositionally, the most interesting part of this image is way over here, and this half of the image is really almost redundant. Like, we know what wings look like, so it would be more effective use of the space. And I feel like many art directors would also tell you, do this, put the character in the middle, right? Unless you have a real reason for them not to be. Let's go ahead and just get him a bit more centered. And then if you wanted to do that, that would work. And then also gives you a chance to do that as well. And we can fill up that scene a bit more. Overall, that would be a stronger scene than really shoving him over to the side and then wasting so much space. Yeah. I can't think of why that would, centering it more wouldn't be better. Yeah. Okay, Travis, excellent. I love seeing your studies. I think the colors are going to work out really well for you. And the time that you've put into the initial stages is really paying off. So, excellent. Oh, I need to close that one. Diabolical says, this is Travis. Oh, Travis, hey. How's it going, man? Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're welcome. Got here near the end, but looking forward to seeing the other info you have. Well, you were next to the last one, so we're going to just be looking at one other, but of course, you could come back and watch the recording. We'll go through the other 14 of them. And last up, we have William Hallett. William, did you not? What did I thought William sent to? Maybe not. Okay, William. The design is working. I like the dark red flesh. Even throwing some of the little tusk things. I wouldn't have thought tusks, but I think they can work. The crazy hair. the bony, like, spinal tail, I think, can work. The biggest thing here is we're way up over him looking down, and he looks little. He looks little. It's like we're looking at a little chicken dinosaur. This guy needs to be a threat. We need to be. Imagine we are human level looking at this thing. We're human size. This thing is bigger than us. We need to be seeing this thing over us, or at least on our eye level. But let's not be looking down on him, which makes it very difficult for him to be menacing. So let's keep a lot of the same design. The gray sort of leather out here. Skin is good. Got that. Guess you got one off of that, and then you've got like ones off of here. It also is pretty rough, so I'm not exactly sure how you're gonna handle some of this, but I mean I can't say too much off of that. Yeah, the main thing is we've got to be able to see this nearer from eye level so that he is, one, taking up the frame more, and he's a bit more threatening. And this is also a scene, not just a character design, so make sure you're doing some compositional studies. That's probably where you need to go to next before you just start, reworking the character. Get your little composition studies out and start thinking about how you want to do it. Get out your little brush and make you some squares, rectangles, I guess. We got rectangles on this one. And we're just thinking about, how do I want this guy? Well, you can start by doing that sort of thing. I'm going to have the head here. I'm going to have the neck coming back like that. I'm going to have the upper body here. I'm going to have like the torso section here. I'm going to have the tail coming around here. And then I'll have like a loop on the tail. And then there, I'll have the shoulders here. They're going to come off like that. And he's going to have them folded up. This. And that way the tail's going to be looping around it. And that's going to be cool. And we got the legs are going to be kind of spread out. He's like balancing himself. Like this. And I was like, okay, well that fills up a lot of it. Or, maybe he's going to be climbing on something, and we've got like the tail here, and he's got his head like up here. It's doing, that sort of thing. And then he's all being like, I'm so macho, and he's got his wings, up here. So this is, where you need to be at this stage, and start working out how you're going to do the scene. And then once you figure out a basic situation, then you can come back and start adding this design onto that and refining it. But the colors are working. A lot of the design ideas are working. Make sure we're not getting too humanoid. This is pretty human proportions. All right, it feels like it could almost be a guy in a suit. So let's make sure that we're keeping with more dragon proportions or bird proportions for the body. Yeah. Okay, man. Hopefully that gives you a better direction going forwards. That was all the entries. So next week we will be looking at the finals of this challenge. We'll be going through each one of those. Again, if you want to jump in the challenge, feel free to do so. You got to be a patron, of course. And I will be putting a post out on Patreon where the upload folder will be for the finals. That'll be next week sometime. And we will be kicking off a new challenge. You guys were talking about maybe doing some sort of spell effect. So I'll keep that in mind. We could go that direction. I also think some other genres or styles would be a good thing to do some challenges on. But we're running over 2 hours right now. Let me go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for everyone that was joined. Thank you for all the patrons that keep this going. And feel free, of course, to put your stuff out on the Facebook group to get some more feedback between now and the submission time in order just to help to improve the image. So, thank you much. I will catch you guys soon. And until I see you next time, keep drawing.